Susan, welcome to the Technik Museum Speyer. I'm very happy that I have you here. We talked a few years about it and it worked out this week. A few questions about your life, your career. You are a Navy test pilot, yeah, and you flew into space twice in 1997. What were the reasons for you as a woman applying to NASA in '92 to become an astronaut candidate as a space shuttle pilot? Because normally women were only mission specialists until the early '90s. That there were no female pilots.
You know, I wasn't thinking about it being a woman. I was just thinking about how cool it would be to fly the space shuttle in space. I loved flying. I loved flying every airplane I could fly. And one day I decided, wouldn't it be cool to fly the space shuttle? And yeah, at the time I was dreaming of this, there were no women at NASA, not even mission specialists. But by the time I finished college, Sally Ride had flown. And by the time I got into test pilot school, it was open up to women pilots.
As already mentioned, you were in space as a pilot on 2 missions with the Space Shuttle. We are here in the flight deck of the Soviet Space Shuttle BURAN OK-GLI, the counterpart to the US Space Shuttle ENTERPRISE OV-101. You are currently in the pilot seat like on your missions. How does that feel for you, and does it bring back memories on your missions?
Oh, it's so awesome to be here. It does. It brings back memories of my mission. I haven't been in the pilot seat of a shuttle since I flew in space. So this is amazing, and I had no idea that this was possible.
What tasks did you have to perform as a pilot on board the Space Shuttle Columbia during your first mission STS-83 in April '97?
Most of my major tasks involved the launch and the re-entry landing phases of the flight, because as a pilot, I was to back up the commander in everything, but I also had all of the hydraulics, electrical system, engine systems were all on my side of the flight deck. So I was responsible for getting things started, making sure things work, being ready in case something failed, especially during the ascent phase. So I was very busy leading up to launch and getting on orbit.
Columbia reached orbit after 8 minutes and 30 seconds. I always compared with a commercial airliner. It takes much longer to get to 10,000 meters or 30,000 feet. Yeah. Describe how you experienced the launch, especially on your first mission, and about the ascent into space from ignition of the SSMEs, booster ignition, liftoff, and the flight phases from SRB, SEP to MECO.
Well, fortunately, they trained us, and we had been in a centrifuge that exactly showed us what the G-forces would feel like. So none of that was a surprise to me. So I could focus on doing my job. And so that 8.5 minutes went by very quickly because I was so busy monitoring everything and making sure I was ready to perform whatever emergency procedures. If we lost an engine, we would have to land maybe in Bermuda or in Europe or Africa. And so I had to be prepared for that.
How did you experience weightlessness for the first time after reaching Earth orbit? Because on the 0G flights, it's only for 25 seconds, yeah. But here, immediately, it was for the whole mission.
Right. And as soon as the engines shut off, we had been under 3Gs for 2 minutes at that point. So we were uncomfortable, felt very heavy. It felt like an elephant was sitting on me. So when the engines cut off, it was so wonderful to finally get to breathe normally and be weightless, but we still had our seatbelts on. It's not until we take our seatbelts off that we actually start floating around.
And the seatbelts went up,
yes.
Not like on Earth when they come down. Huh?
Exactly.
As a pilot, what tasks did you have to perform during the mission in addition for launch and landing?
It was a science mission that I was on, and I did not train up for any of the science. So I was backing up the scientists, providing help whenever they needed it. But I also performed all the housekeeping tasks on the shuttle, the cleaning and whatnot that needed. I would align the systems, marking on stars so that basically the GPS was tight for when we wanted to come home. I was also the photographer, the doctor, the maintenance person. So I had a lot of tasks.
Susan, we are here in the European Space Lab module, in the training module from the German Space Agency, DLR. A lot of astronauts trained in this module. How does it feel for you to be in the Space Lab module here? Does it bring back memories having the Space Lab module in the payload bay of Columbia?
Yes, it's very similar to microgravity science laboratory that we flew on both of my missions. So it is, it's like being back home.
After the aborted STS-83 mission and its successful landing on April 8, 1997, NASA decided to add the mission as a reflight in the flight plan. With the STS-94 mission, which was the next available flight number, you lifted off on the reflight and your second mission just 3 months later. The mission lasted just under 16 days and 33 scientific experiments were carried out in the European Space Lab module. How were the work and tasks defined for the crew during the Space Lab mission? The crew typically worked around the clock.
We did. We worked 24 hours a day to complete all the science because that was our entire mission, was the science. And we had 2 payload specialists that specialized in the specific science we were doing, and 2 of the mission specialists also were dedicated to the science. And then the rest of us just helped in when we could or when they needed. The commander, Jim Halsell, and Mike Gernhardt also had a little bit of science to do, but I had very little science to do in our missions.
I saw some video clips. Were you also a medical object on this mission?
We didn't have much in the medical science world. There were a few things that we did, but they didn't take very much time. But I was the doctor on board, if that's what you're referring to. Yes, I was the medical doctor. I was there in case there were medical needs, but the only need there ever was maybe anti-nausea medicine or pain medicine for a headache, but that was it.
Yeah, I remember this was for each shuttle mission that one crew member has some training in medical. Okay, sometimes doctors flew, they didn't need any medical, but I think this is important. In a 60-day mission, there can be little injuries. Yeah,
yes, I was hoping. I mean, I could have stitched somebody up or pulled a tooth, but nobody needed anything.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. I think they were afraid that I would be the one to fix them.
The MSL-1 mission was planned for 15 days. After the failure of one of the 3 fuel cells, at the beginning of the mission, you had to cut the mission short and return to Earth after just 4 days. According to the flight rules, the mission had to be aborted. What were the specifications regarding the fuel cells, and how big was the disappointment for you and your crew members?
It was, for the fuel cells, it showed a signature that meant if we didn't shut that fuel cell down, it might catch on fire, which would be extremely dangerous in space and uncontrolled fire. And our fuel cell is where we get our electricity from. So we had 3 fuel cells. We had to shut one down. We were safe. We had less electricity than we wanted, but we were safe. But had we lost another fuel cell, then it would be extremely difficult to get us back to Earth. So that's what caused us to have to come home early. And as far as how we felt, well, the scientists, of course, were devastated that we were ending the mission early. As a pilot, I don't know, I got to launch, I got to orbit the Earth a bunch of days, I took some pictures, I floated around, and I did my job, and I was going to get to land. So I ended up not being as disappointed as one might think. As a space shuttle pilot, you just mentioned the landing. You landed twice with Columbia at the SLF, the shuttle landing facility at the Kennedy Space Center, from deorbit burn at a speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. It takes about 65 minutes to land at about 350 kilometers per hour. How is the speed reduced so quickly in about an hour? Well, mainly it's reduced by a lot of drag. Once you enter the Earth's atmosphere, well, first of all, we slow down in order to come back down to Earth. And once we start entering the Earth's atmosphere, half an orbit away, it starts to slow us down. And we continue to slow down all the way to Florida. And then when we are over the landing site, we can, if necessary, use basically speed brakes that help us slow down if necessary, just to get our speed at the right place at the right time.
Mhm. What is the biggest difference between the landing of a commercial passenger airplane compared to Columbia, which is about a 100-ton glider?
Yeah, the biggest difference is the lack of engines.
Mhm.
I mean, you would not like it if your commercial airplane didn't have engines when you came down to land. And because we have no engines in the shuttle, we would have to fly a very steep glide path, 20 degrees, where airliners fly about 2 degrees. So that means we are heading very quickly to crash into the Earth. And it's only in the last, 500 meters or so that we start to raise our nose up slowly to slow down and be ready for touchdown.
Yeah, the NASA language says it's landing like a brick or flying like a
Yes.
brick with a 20-degree slope to the shuttle landing facility.
Yes, if you can imagine, the wings are really short, so it doesn't really glide anywhere. It just falls from the sky.
Yeah. Were there any major challenges or problems other than the fuel cell failure, and what were the most exciting experiences of your 2 space shuttle missions?
There were no other major problems with STS-83 and no major problems of STS-94. And for me, just the experience of seeing our planet from that vantage point of space would have to be the highlight. Very few people have experienced it. I think we're like a little over 600, maybe close to 700 people in the world have been to space. And you just get a new appreciation for Earth when you see it from that vantage point.
This is your first time at the Apollo and Beyond space exhibition at the Technik Museum Speyer. What do you particularly like most?
Oh my goodness, there is so much to see here. I had no idea this even existed. And so to see all the displays and actual artifacts that have been in space and the lunar rover and just it's amazing. And that's just the space stuff, but there's a whole bunch of other things here at the museum to see. So I think you could easily spend 2 or more days here.
You know many space museums in the US and other countries. How would you categorize the Apollo and Beyond space exhibition here at the museum?
This is absolutely the best I've seen.
This afternoon, you gave a lecture about your 2 space missions at the museum. Why is it important to talk about human spaceflight and give lectures?
I think it's important for many reasons. Mainly because not everybody's going to get to go to space and see Earth from this vantage point that I did. I'm hoping to instill the same feeling I got of how fragile Earth is and how important it is we all work together to protect Earth. But and that's for everybody in the audience. And I particularly like inspiring kids because I feel like I'm an unlikely astronaut. It was unlikely I would ever become an astronaut. And I want the kids in the audience to know that if they set a dream, then anything's possible.
You just mentioned the kids. After your lecture, you signed your children's book, An Unlikely Astronaut, for children and adults. Yeah. What do you want to convey with this book, especially to children?
That even if something's unlikely, it's still possible. If they want to do it and they put their mind to it and they work hard, they can become whatever they want to become.
Thank you very much, Susan, for the interview.
Thank you.